In this video, we are going to download Ubuntu and install it in VirtualBox. So to find Ubuntu, you can simply go to ubuntu.com, or you can type it into Google here, and Google will take you there. So you see ubuntu.com is the legitimate source. You can click on download. Here we have a few options. We have Ubuntu Desktop and Ubuntu Server. For this exercise, we're going to download Ubuntu Server. The version we're going to use is 18.04 LTS. 18 is the year, so 2018.04 is the month. So January, February, March, April. So this is the long-term support version, and this is the most stable version you can get. That means this version came out in 2018 on the 4th month, which is April. This is long-term support, which means it's good for 5 years, which means this version will be supported for 5 years. Optionally, you can download 18.10, which came out in 2018 October, but with the non-LTS versions, you have to update it every 9 months or so, which is basically doing rolling updates, which can cause some stability problems with your environment. So generally it's recommended, if you are concerned about stability and long-term support, you use the LTS version. So we're going to go ahead and download this version. You can just click on this. It will automatically start downloading. It's about 812 meg, you see right there. So the download has finished. It's right here. It is a ISO, which is what we're going to use to install Ubuntu 18.04 server. So now we're going to open VirtualBox. We're going to select we're going to select New. Add allows you to add an existing virtual machine. New, in this case, we're installing a virtual machine, so we're creating a new one. So we're going to click on New here. Alternatively, you could select Import to import an existing virtual machine from VMware or something else. So we'll click on New. We're going to name the system, so we are using Ubuntu Server 2018.04. I'm going to save it in DVMs. This will default to whatever you have it set for with your Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager settings. You can change that later, or you can browse to a different directory. Whenever I typed in Ubuntu, you notice this here. If I cancel that, I click on New again, you notice right here it says Windows, but when I type in UB, it went to Linux automatically, so it figured it out, just based on what you are naming the virtual machine. So Ubuntu Server 18.04. If it does not select these two, the type and the version properly, you'll need to manually select the correct one. In this case, Ubuntu is Linux, and we are doing the 64-bit version. Click on Next. By default for Ubuntu, it wants to use 1 gig of RAM. We can always change this later, so let's leave it at 1024 megabytes or 1 gig. Now we get to select the hard drive. We can create a hard disk now, which is the default. The recommended size is 10 gig. So we're going to go ahead and do that. This option gives us the choice of what type of hard disk. So a VDI is a VirtualBox disk image. So if we're going to use this virtual machine with VirtualBox primarily, we should choose VDI. If we want to maybe use it with a different platform later on, we could choose one of these other options. But for now, we will choose VDI. Now we have two options. to dynamically allocate the size of the hard drive or fixed size. It recommended a 10 gig hard drive, so if we choose fixed size, the hard drive will be 10 gig, and that'll take up 10 gig of our host operating system. If we choose dynamically allocated, which the default, the hard drive can grow up to 10 gig in size, so it may take up to 10 gig of the host hard drive, but it will only use the space necessary. So it may start out with a few hundred meg and grow eventually to 10 gig. So if you're concerned about space, it's recommended you choose dynamically allocated. If you're concerned about speed, you should choose fixed size. In this case, since we're setting this up in a virtual environment on a Windows 10 machine, we don't care too much about performance. This is just for testing. So we're going to go ahead and leave dynamically allocated as the choice. Here we have the option of how large to make that hard drive, and as I mentioned before, it defaulted to 10 gig. We could make it larger though. If we decide we want to store a bunch of data on this virtual machine, we may want to make this larger. Alternatively, we could add a second virtual hard disk to this virtual machine and put other stuff on there. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 10 gig. Go ahead and click on Create. And now we have a screen here where you see all the settings. So just to review, we have Ubuntu Server 18.04. This is the name. The OS is Ubuntu 64-bit. We're saving it in this directory right here. For the system, we chose the default of 1024 megabyte for RAM. For video memory, this is the defaults. We didn't change that. For the storage, we chose 10 gig, and that was dynamically allocated. And everything else is the defaults, which is fine. So we'll go ahead and click on Start now. And what this is doing is starting the virtual machine. So all we've done so far is configure the virtual machine, but we haven't actually installed the operating system. So the next step is to install the operating system and to install Ubuntu. The way to do this is to boot off of an ISO. So we downloaded the ISO from the Ubuntu website, and now we're going to point this directory to where that ISO is located, which is right here. So what this is doing is when the computer boots up, when the virtual machine boots up, it's going to look at this ISO and boot off of this ISO and start the installation process. So go ahead and click on Start. It makes it a little bit bigger here. It's not going to be too large right now, but we can make the screen larger once we finish the installation. So right now, VirtualBox is booting off of that ISO, and this will take us through the installation process. What we're doing for this installation process is we are installing Ubuntu on the virtual hard drive, that 10 gig hard drive we created. So then once we finish the installation and reboot, it will boot off of that hard drive rather than the ISO. As far as the language goes here, we're just going to walk through these screens. English. We have an English keyboard, so go ahead and click on Enter again. We are installing Ubuntu, so go ahead and choose this default right here. Go ahead and choose Done here. We're going to use that NIC. You can see right here, ETH, you can't really see my mouse in there, but you see it says ETH 10.0.2.15/24. So this is the virtual network adapter within VirtualBox, and VirtualBox by default will assign a 10.02 address to a virtual machine. This is the default configuration with VirtualBox. And we're going to change that later, but we'll leave it for this for now. This will give us internet access using NAT. And it is worth mentioning here, because a lot of people ask, well, how do I change that default setting for VirtualBox? And right here, this is on virtualbox.org site. You can search for fine-tuning the Oracle VM VirtualBox NAT engine. There is no way to change this through the GUI of VirtualBox, which is a little bit frustrating. But you see right here it says by default the IP version 4 range is 10.0x.0/24, where x corresponds to the instance of the NAT interface plus 2. Right, it's kind of confusing. So x is 2 when there's only one NAT instance active. In the case of our system right here, we only have one NAT instance active, so we are 10.0.2.15. That's the first guessed. The default gateway is 10.0.2.2. So once we finish the installation and go to a command prompt and type in ifconfig, we should see the IP address of 10.0.2.15, and we'll see a default gateway or default route of 10.0.2.2. To change this, you have to go to the C drive, program files, Oracle, VirtualBox, and run this command. This will change the network from the 10.0.2 network to the 192.168 network. We'll go over this later on, but I want to explain where this 10.0.2 comes from, because you can't find it in the GUI, and a lot of people wonder, you know, how did my virtual machine get assigned a 10.0.2 address? Well, this is how. So I'm going to go ahead and go back here to Ubuntu, click on Done. There is no proxy server in my configuration, so click on Done. The mirror address is fine, done. I'm going to use the entire disk for the installation. We're not using LVM here, so go ahead and click on Use an entire disk. So this is confirming that we want to install Ubuntu on this hard drive right here. This hard drive is the disk we created earlier with VirtualBox. And as you see, it's 10 gig. So go ahead and click on that. Now go ahead and click on Done here. That's fine. We can just accept these defaults. And we have a little warning here that says we may erase all the data on that hard drive. So are you sure you want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. Since we just set up this hard drive, there's nothing on it. So yes, we want to do it. But in case you were installing this on a real system, you may overwrite the hard drive. So this is the warning. So now your name. So this is just the name you go by. So in my case, I'm going to put I'll just put Tom Cruise. Server's name. This is the name of the server. I'm going to call it Top Gun. Username, I'll say Maverick. Password, I'll make one up here. And we are not importing an SSH key, so go ahead and tab down, click on Done. On this screen, you can choose different packages you want or snaps. We're not going to install any snaps right now, but if you wanted to use this machine with Docker containers, for instance, you could choose Docker. You can run PowerShell. You can choose all these other options here. Heroku, etc. So we're just going to leave these the way they are. Tab over to Done, click on Done, and now it's going to take probably 5 or 10 minutes to install here. Right now what it's doing is pulling the data off of the ISO file and it's starting to create the file system. So it'll take about 5 or 10 minutes here. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and I'll return when we see some progress. Here we see a little bit. It should get down to the kernel. And it'll stick here for probably a few minutes. So it looks like it's moved beyond the kernel. Now it's asking to reboot. So it looks like the installation is completed. Now once we reboot, it should boot off of the virtual hard drive, that 10 gig hard drive, and not off of the ISO. If we boot off the ISO again, we're just going to repeat the installation process. So go ahead and click on reboot now. And it'll take a second to reboot. It's going to boot off the virtual system here. We don't have to remove the installation medium because this is not like a USB thumb drive or CD-ROM or something. So I'm just going to go ahead and press enter here. So it'll take a second to read off the hard drive. Everyone's system will be at a different speed. My system is a little bit slow. I've got full disk encryption, so it's a little bit slow, but it's not too bad. So we see everything starting up. All those green OKs are good. If we see an error, it might be something we need to investigate. So we'll let it continue going here. And when it finishes, we should be at a logon screen. So whatever username and password you typed in during the installation is what is going to be requested here. In my case, I believe I typed in Maverick with a password, and I believe I named the computer Top Gun. I can't remember, to be honest. So we'll see what pops up here. It's one of those combinations. It's getting close. I know the suspense is building here. All right, looks like we're finally at the logon screen. I hit a command up here earlier on accident, so you can ignore that, but you should see a logon screen. So if you move the mouse in the window there, you can type in the Ubuntu window. So Maverick is what I typed in, or what I made for the username, and then my password. If I typed it in right, looks like it did. So now we are logged in to Ubuntu as Maverick, and the name of this computer is Top Gun. So now we have successfully installed Ubuntu. We can update Ubuntu using apt-get. We can also run an ifconfig to verify we have network connectivity, as we mentioned earlier. So ifconfig. And there we have the 10.02 address we discussed earlier. So to update Ubuntu, and often one of the first things you want to do after you install an operating system is update it. So it's secure from attacks, and it's got the latest patches. You can do sudo apt-get update. So what this will do is update the repository on the local system with all the latest packages available. And then once we do this update, we can do an upgrade, which will upgrade all the packages on the system with the latest ones available. We see the packages have been updated. Now we want to do an upgrade. So sudo apt-get upgrade. And it's going to ask you if you want to continue, because it's going to upgrade. As you can see here, all these utilities will be upgraded. And it's going to take about 13.7 meg of additional space. So go ahead and click on yes. And now it will download all these latest packages and update the system. So it looks like we have about 5 minutes left for these updates. So that'll wrap up this video here. In the next video, we'll go into how to configure the networking and some other options here on Ubuntu. But congratulations, if you've gotten this far, you've installed Ubuntu from scratch effectively, and you've updated it in VirtualBox. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them below on the video. If you like the video, please subscribe for more cool videos. Take care.